Red blood surges like a tide, staining the eternal snows of the Andes Mountains, and a faint steam of life's warmth rises from a severed wrist. There is a man. Both of his hands have been chopped off, yet he stands there, lashing sharp steel blades to his stumps with leather thongs, and plunges back into the fray. You took my hands, then my arms shall become the spears that pierce your hearts. His name is Galvarino, and his people are the Mapuche, the only force on earth that the Spanish Empire, the greatest power of its time, could not subjugate for over 300 years. What kind of madness possessed these jungle warriors to make the giants of Europe, armed with muskets and cavalry, flee in absolute terror? Today, you will witness how much of the history we know is a grand lie, and just how cruel human grit can become when pushed to the edge. Let us go back to 1541. The Spanish, having just obliterated the Inca Empire, were marching south with arrogant ease. To them, the Mapuche were nothing more than naked savages. But the conquistador Pedro de Valdivia had no idea he was stepping into the graveyard of conquerors. The Mapuche moved in total silence. Out of the humid jungle mist, a massive club would suddenly swing, crushing a Spanish helmet and splattering brains like ripened fruit. Nooses snatched horses' legs, slingshots struck eyes with pinpoint accuracy. The Spanish were baffled. These are not men. The forest itself is attacking us. But then a chilling reversal occurred. There was a young boy named Lautaro, who worked as a stable hand and slave for the Spanish army. He observed their tactics with cold precision, how the horses moved and exactly how long it took to reload a musket. One day, Lautaro escaped and returned to his people, teaching them the secret to neutralizing the cavalry the Spanish relied on so heavily. At the Battle of Tucapel in 1553, Lautaro launched wave after wave of attacks, wearing the Spanish down. Even as hundreds of warriors fell, the next wave crashed in. Finally, the Spanish commander, Valdivia himself, was captured alive. Have you ever imagined what the Mapuche did to the man who tried to conquer them? According to records, they cut open Valdivia's chest and pulled out his still-beating heart. They sliced it into pieces and chewed it, a ritual to consume the courage of their enemy. An even more gruesome account suggests they mocked his greed for gold by pouring molten gold down his throat. You love gold so much? Now your belly shall be filled with it forever. Valdivia's screams echoed through the Andean valleys, reaching the Spanish garrisons. From that day on, Spanish soldiers would wet themselves and chant frantic prayers at the mere sound of a Mapuche drum. In that situation, would you have held your ground, or would you have thrown yourself into the sea to escape? The Mapuche's resistance was terrifying because of their evolution. Most indigenous groups fled in fear of Western weapons, but the Mapuche adapted. They stripped the armor off dead Spaniards and refitted it for themselves. They captured horses and organized the world's most formidable indigenous cavalry. Suddenly, the Spanish had to face an enemy, using their own tactics to slaughter them. Their Macana clubs were powerful enough to turn bone into powder, and after crushing an enemy's skull, Mapuche warriors would turn those very skulls into drinking cups to celebrate their victory. This brings us back to Galvarino. When the Spanish captured him, they chopped off both his hands as a warning. Go tell your people this is the end for those who resist. But Galvarino didn't even scream. Instead, he picked up his severed hands, walked away with his head high, and returned to his tribe only to strap knives to his arms. At the Battle of Milarapué in 1557, Galvarino stood at the front, swinging his blade arms and reaping Spanish necks like wheat. The sight was so demonic that the Spanish soldiers broke ranks, crying that a wraith from hell had returned. The air was filled with the sound of snapping bone and tearing flesh, and Galvarino's blades did not stop until they were drenched in crimson. Now, let's count them down, the top 3 moments of madness, where the Mapuche overwhelmed Spain. Number 3, the aesthetics of the trap. The Mapuche dug thousands of pits beneath seemingly solid ground, lining the bottoms with sharpened bamboo stakes. They covered them with thin branches and dirt. When the Spanish cavalry charged, dozens of horses would plunge into the earth, simultaneously snapping legs and impaling soldiers like skewers on a grill. Without swinging a single sword, the Mapuche could annihilate an elite unit, leaving the Spanish terrified to even step into the woods. Number 2, psychological butchery. The Mapuche didn't always kill captives instantly. Instead, they would slowly peel the skin off prisoners or sever their fingers, joint by joint in full view of their comrades. The jungle would ring all night with the primal screams of the dying, and the next morning, the horrific remains would be left hanging from the trees. This psychological torture broke the minds of the Spanish soldiers. Records show many chose to take their own lives, or simply went insane from the sheer dread. Number 1, the severing of the Bio. In the end, Spain gave up. They declared the Bio River a formal border, the only instance in the entire era of imperialism where a European power officially recognized an indigenous nation's land through a treaty. 300 years of war, hundreds of thousands dead. But the Mapuche never knelt. Even in front of Spanish muskets, they stuck out their tongues and shouted, "Shoot us!" Even in death, we will become the spirits of the forest and haunt you forever. Does this sound like a myth from a distant land? The descendants of the Mapuche live on today in Chile, still fighting for their rights. In their veins flows the same grit of ancestors who chewed Valdivia's heart and strapped knives to severed wrists. While civilizations across the globe crumbled like sandcastles under the imperialist tide, only they pierced through the wave and survived. If you were a conquistador in the 16th century, could you have marched forward, seeing Galvarino's blade arms gleaming through the mist? Or would you have recoiled, imagining your own heart being sliced and consumed? History isn't made by guns and steel. It's made by the human soul that refuses to surrender. The Mapuche prove this with a record written in blood. The drums of the Mapuche still whisper in the Andean wind. As long as you do not sell your soul, you are never truly defeated. If this story sent chills down your spine, or if you felt the thrill of these warriors' madness, hit the subscribe and like buttons. Next time, we'll bring you the story of another group of warriors who brought down an empire using even more brutal and bizarre methods. Your support keeps the spirits of these forgotten heroes alive. Thank you for watching.